Hey viewer, in this video we will dive into the movie The Meg. We will talk about the storyline, give a clear plot summary and explore the cast and characters. In addition, we will take a look at the film's production detail and its box office performance. Finally, we will share reviews along with some personal reaction. So let's get started. When approaching a film like The Meg, it's worth slowing down and appreciating why it naturally invites discussion in the first place. This is not just another entry in the long line of action thriller, it sits at an interesting intersection of genres, filmmaking choices, and commercial ambition. As a reviewer, this is exactly the kind of film that sparks curiosity before you even being analyzing its deeper qualities. Let's start with the genre. At its core, the Meg operates within the creature feature tradition, but it does not stay confined there. It blends science fiction, action, and thriller element into something designed for mass appeal. That mix is important because it reflects a broader trend in modern cinema. Films are no longer satisfied with fitting into one category. Instead, they aim to deliver a hybrid experience. In this case, you get the tension of a thriller, the scale of a sci-fi concept, and the explosive energy of an action blockbuster. That combination alone makes the film worth discussing because it shows how studios try to balance spectacle with suspense. Now, looking at the director Jon Turteltaub bring a particular sensibility to the project. He is not known for dark, brooding cinema. Instead, his background lean toward accessible, crowd-pleasing entertainment. That influence is very visible in the film's tone and pacing. Rather than leaning heavily into horror realism, the direction favor clarity, momentum, and a sense of fun. This is a deliberate choice. It tells us the film is designed to engage a wide audience rather than challenge them with complexity. For a reviewer, this raises interesting question: how does a director shape expectation within a genre that often relies on fear and intensity? And how does that shift affect the audience experience? Production style is where the Meg becomes even more fascinating. This is a large scale, internationally funded production, and you can feel that global influence through its design. The film is polished, visually ambitious, and clearly built with modern blockbuster standard in mind. The use of visual effects play a central role, not just a technical necessity, but as a storytelling tool that defines the film identity. The scale is exaggerated almost intentionally, so emphasizing spectacle over subtlety. That approach reflects the current blockbuster philosophy: bigger visuals, broad appeal, and a cinematic experience that translate across different markets. Another aspect of the production worth discussing is how it balances realism with entertainment. The film does not fully commit to scientific accuracy, and that's not a flaw, it's a creative decision. That production leaning into stylization, prioritizing excitement and visual impact over strict believability. This raises an important point for viewer when evaluating a film like this. The criteria shift. Instead of asking whether it is realistic, we ask whether it succeeds within its own rule. Does the style support the experience it promises? Does the scale feel intentional rather than excessive? There is also a broader industry context to consider. Films like The Meg represent a type of cinema that aim to be universally accessible. The production choices ranges from pacing to visual design are carefully crafted to appeal to international audience. This reflects how modern filmmaking is increasingly shaped by global market. As a result, the film becomes more than just entertainment. It becomes a case study in how studios design movies for worldwide consumption. So even before diving into deeper analysis, the Meg proved itself worth discussing. Its genre blending, the directing approach of Jon Turteltaub, and its large-scale production style all come together to create a film that is as much about industry trend as it is about entertainment. As a reviewer, that combination make it an ideal starting point. A film that invites conservation, not just about what's on screen, but about how and why it was made. The Meg was produced with an estimated budget generally reported in the range of 130 to 150 million dollar, placing it firmly within the category of mid to high tier Hollywood blockbuster. This level of investment reflects both the technical demand of the project and its intended position in the global film market. From a production standpoint, the budget is not unusually high compared to the largest franchise film, but it is substantial enough to require careful allocation of resources and a clear strategy for international appeal. A significant portion of the budget was directed toward visual effect and digital production. As the film centered around a large-scale computer-generated creature, the creation and integration of CGI elements would have require extensive post-production work. These include modeling, animation, rendering, and compositing, all of which are resource-intensive processes. In addition, underwater environments were created practically or digitally at complexity and cost. These technical requirements likely accounted for one of the largest share of the total expenditure. Another important component of the budget involves set design and location work. Even though much of the film relies on digital environment, physical sets are still necessary to ground performance and interaction. Water tank controls, studio environment, and specialized equipment for stimulating underwater conditions are typically expensive to construct and maintain. These elements contribute to both production realism and actor safety, but they are also increased logistical cost. The cast and crew expenses form another essential category. While Jensen Statham is a recognizable lead, the film does not rely on an ensemble of extremely high-cost actor blockbuster. However, the involvement of an international cast, including Bingbing, suggests a deliberate effort to appeal to multiple markets, particularly China. This strategy, aligned with the film's co-production structure, and likely influenced how financial resources were distributed. Marketing and distribution costs, while not always included in the official production budget, are also relevant when considering the film's overall financial scope. For a budget of this scale, promotional spending can be substantial, often approaching or exceeding tens of millions of dollars. The marketing campaign would have been designed to emphasize the film's visual spectacle and accessibility, targeting a broad international audience. When comparing the film to Meg to the other similar film, its budget appears moderate within its genre. For instance, Jurassic World reportedly had a production budget of around $150 million, while Godzilla also operated in a similar financial range. These films, like the Meg, rely heavily on visual effects and large-scale action sequences. However, major franchise entries or sequel can exceed $200 million, indicating that the Meg was produced with a relatively tighter financial constraint compared to the highest budget production. This comparison highlights an important aspect of the film budgeting approach. It aimed to deliver blockbuster level visual without reaching the upper extreme of spending. This balance suggests a calculated risk where the producer sought to maximize return on investment by controlling cost while still meeting audience expectation for spectacle. In analytical terms, the budget of the film reflects a combination of technical necessity, market strategy, and cost management. Resources were allocated primarily toward visual effects and production infrastructure, with additional consideration given to the international casting and marketing reach. When placed alongside comparable films, its budget indicates a mid-range approach within the blockbuster category, emphasizing efficiency rather than excess. When discussing the genre and the overall mood of the film, it becomes clear that the films operate within a carefully blended framework of action, science fiction, and a thriller with light touches of adventure. This combination shapes not only how the film is categorized but also how it feels moment to moment. Rather than commenting fully to one genre, the films adopt a hybrid identity that prioritizes accessibility and broad appeal over strict tonal consistency. The atmosphere is built around a sense of scale and control tension. Unlike traditional horror-driven creature feature, the film does not rely heavily on sustained fear or psychological unease. Instead, it creates an environment where tension is present but often moderated. The mood leans toward anticipation rather than dread, maintaining a balance that keeps the experience engaging without becoming overwhelming. This approach allows the film to remain suitable for a wider audience, allowing viewers who might avoid more intense or graphic material. Pacing plays a central role in shaping this atmosphere. The film follows a steady forward moving rhythm that avoids prolonged slow segments. Moment of build-up are relatively brief, quickly transitioning into action-oriented sequences create a dynamic viewing experience where the audience is rarely left waiting for long period. However, this pacing choice also limit the depth of suspense as the film prioritizes momentum over lingering tension. From a stylistic perspective, this aligns with modern blockbuster convention, where maintaining audience segment often take precedence over atmospheric subtitling. The tone of the film is notably balanced between seriousness and entertainment, while the premise suggests potential for darker or more intense treatment. The films adopt a more approachable and sometimes playful tone. This is partially influenced by the direction of Jon Turteltaub, whose styles tend to favor clarity and audience-friendly storytelling. As a result, the film avoids becoming overly grim or oppressive. Instead, it presents its high-stake element within a framework that remains digestible and at times lightly self-aware. Stylistically, the film emphasizes visual clarity and spectacle. The use of digital effects is central to its presentation, but these effects are designed to be easily readable rather than abstract or experimental. The camera work generally supports this goal, focusing on wide, comprehensible shots that highlight scale and movement. This choice reinforces the film's identity as a spectacle-driven production where visual impact is the primary objective. Sound design and music also contribute significantly to the overall mood. The score tends to underscore tension and action without becoming overly dominant or stylistically distinctive. It supports the pacing by signaling shift in intensity, helping guide the audience through the film's rhythm. The sound design, particularly in sequence involving water and movement, enhances immersion while maintaining clarity. These elements work together to create a cohesive sensory experience that aligns with the film's broader stylistic goal. In comparison to genre predecessors like Jaw, the Mac adopted a less restrained and more extensive approach, where earlier films in the genre often rely on minimalism and suggestion. This film embraces visibility and scale. This shift reflects changes in audience expectation and technological capabilities. Modern viewers are accustomed to seeing the spectacle directly, and the film responds to that expectation by prioritizing visual presence over subtitle implication. Overall, the genre and the mood of the film are defined by balance and accessibility. It blends multiple genres to create a versatile viewing experience, maintains a tone that avoids extreme and uses patience and stylistic choices to sustain engagement. The result is a film that feels consistent with contemporary blockbuster trend, focused on delivering a controlled, visually driven atmosphere that appeals to a broad audience without demanding deep emotional or psychological investment. When audience approach the film, their expectations are shaped long before the opening scene being. These expectations come from a mix of marketing, genre familiarity, casting choices, and the general reputation of modern blockbuster filmmaking. As a result, viewers do not enter this film neutrally. They arrive with a fairly clear idea of the kind of experience they are about to have. From a viewer demographic perspective, the film is positioned to attract a broad international audience. It is not aimed at a niche group or highly specialized segment of moviegoer. Instead, it targets mainstream viewers who approach large-scale entertainment. Younger audience, particularly teenagers and young adults, are likely to be drawn in by the promise of spectacle and fast-paced action. At the same time, older viewers who grew up with classic creature features may feel a sense of familiarity with the concept. This cross-generational appeal is intentional. The presence of Jensen Statham further reinforces this as he brings recognition among fans of action cinema, sitting on the expectation of physical intensity and a certain style of performance. For many, viewer expectations are also shaped by comparison to earlier film in the same genre. A title like The Meg naturally invites association with Ja, which remain a defining example of the shark thriller. However, audience today generally do not expect the same slow burn suspense or sustained storytelling. Instead, they anticipate something larger in scale and more direct in its delivery. This expectation is a broader shift in audience preferences, where spectacle often take priority over minimalism. Looking at anticipated theme, viewers are likely to expect a focus on humanity's interaction with nature, particularly the idea of confronting forces that are shaped human control. Even without knowing specific, the premise suggests themes related to exploration, risk, and survival. However, most audiences do not go into this film expecting deep philosophical exploration. Instead, they anticipate these themes to be presented in a straightforward and accessible way. The expectation is that the film will touch on these ideas without becoming overly complex or demanding. Genre fans also play a particularly important role in shaping expectation. Those who enjoy action and science fiction film often look for certain familiar element, consistent pacing, clear states, and visually engaging sequence. Fans of creature features in particular tend to expect a balance between tension and spectacle. They are usually willing to expect a degree of exaggeration as long as the film remains entertaining within its own framework. For this audience, realism is less important than execution. The expectation is not that the film will be scientifically accurate, but that it will be internally consistent and visually convincing. There is also an expectation tied to the film's production scale. Giving its blockbuster positioning, viewers anticipate high quality visual effects and polished cinematography. Modern audiences are accustomed to certain technical standards, especially in films that rely heavily on digital elements. As a result, there is an implicit expectation that the visuals will meet or exceed industry norms. If the effect appear unconvincing or inconsistent, it can significantly impact how the film is received, regardless of other strength. Another important factor is tone. Based on the film's marketing and genre, audience generally expect a tone that balances intensity with accessibility. Very few viewers go into the mega expecting a dark or deeply unsettling experience. Instead, they anticipate something more controlled, an experience that delivers excitement without becoming emotionally exhausting. These expectations align with the directing style of Jon Turteltaub, whose work often emphasizes clarity and audience engagement over heavy dramatic weight. At the same time, there is an unspoken understanding among viewers that the film will prioritize entertainment over originality. Many people approach it with the expectation that it will follow familiar genre pattern. This does not necessarily reduce enjoyment. In fact, for many viewers, predictability can be the part of the appeal. The comfort of recognizable structure allows audience to focus on the experience rather than the outcome. In an opinion-based sense, these expectations are both a strength and a limitation. On one hand, they help the films connect with a wide audience by delivering what is anticipated. On the other hand, they can restrict how the film is perceived, as viewers may be less open to surprise or deviation from the expected formula. Ultimately, the Meg enter the conservation as a film where expectations are clearly defined, shaped by genre tradition, star power, and modern blockbuster standard, and the viewing experience is largely influenced by how closely it aligns with those preconceived ideas. The Meg is designed with a clearly defined broad audience in mind, but it is not truly universal. Its construction through tone, pacing, and stylistic choices signal that it is tailored for viewers who prioritize entertainment value over depth and a spectacle over subtlety. Understanding its target audience requires looking closely at age group interest and genre preferences. Starting with the age group, the film is primarily aimed at teenagers and adults, roughly in the range of 13 to 45 years old. It sits comfortably in a space where young viewers can engage with the excitement without becoming overwhelmed by intensity, while older viewers can appreciate the scale and production quality. The film avoids extreme in tone, which make it accessible to a younger audience, but it is not specifically crafted for children. Instead, it occupies that middle ground where it feels mature enough for teens, but not too heavy or complex for casual viewing. This balanced accessibility is a common trait in modern blockbusters. In terms of interest, the film clearly targets viewers who enjoy high energy, visually driven entertainment. People who are drawn to action sequence, large scale set pieces, and cinematic spectacle are the primary audience. These include viewers who prefer films that are easy to follow and do not require significant emotional or intellectual investment. The presence of Jason Statham also attract fans of action cinema, particularly those who appreciate a straightforward, specifically grounded style of performance. His involvement signals a certain type of film, one that emphasizes movement intensity and direct engagement rather than layer character exploration. Another important segment of the target audience include fan of creature features and aquatic thrillers. These viewers are already familiar with the convention of the genre and often seek out film that deliver tension through encounter with large threatening creature. For this group, realism is usually secondary to execution. They expect a certain level of exaggeration and are willing to accept it as part of the experience. Comparison to classic like Jon naturally raised, but the expectation here is not for the same restrained approach. Instead, this audience look for a modern interpretation that emphasizes scale and visibility. For genre preferences standpoint, the films appeal most strongly to those who enjoy a blend of action, science fiction, and thriller elements. Viewers who prefer slower, character-driven dramas or highly realistic narrative are less likely to find this film engaging. The pacing and tone are designed for audiences who want immediate engagement and consistent momentum. This makes it particularly appealing to viewers who watch film for relaxation or escapism rather than analysis or emotional depth. The film also attracts a target an international audience, which influences overall design. Its style avoids culturally specific humor or deeply localized theme, making it easier for viewers from different regions to connect with it. This broad appeal is a deliberate strategy reflecting how modern films are often produced with global market in mind. The inclusion of internationally recognized actors such as Bingbing further support the goal, signaling that the film is intended to resonate beyond a single demographic or region. Another key region of the target audience is their tolerance for stylization and exaggeration. The film does not aim for strict realism, and it is assuming that the viewers are comfortable with that. This makes it less suitable for audiences who prefer grounded, scientifically accurate storytelling. Instead, it is aimed at those who can enjoy a film on its own term, expecting its internal logic without questioning its plausibility too deeply. It is also worth noting that the film is well suited for casual group viewing. Its straightforward structure and emphasis on visual engagement make it accessible in social settings such as watching with friends or family. It does not demand constant attention to detail, which allow viewer to engage with it in a more relaxed way. This quality further defines its audience as a people looking for shared entertainment rather than a solitary immersive experience. In a broader sense, the film is made for viewers who value experience over interpretation. It caters to those who enjoy being entertained in a direct and immediate way without needing to unpack deeper meaning or themes. While it may not fully satisfy audience seeking complexity or innovation, it effectively serves those who want a clear, engaging, and visually driven film. Overall, the target audience for the film can be described as mainstream spectacle-oriented viewers, particularly teens and adults, who enjoy action-heavy genre-blending films and are comfortable with a style that prioritizes excitement and accessibility over realism and depth. When considering the emotional experience promised by the film, it becomes clear that the film is designed less as a deeply affecting journey and more as a controlled surface level emotional ride. Its primary goal is not to leave a lasting emotional imprint, but to provide a consistent flow of excitement, tension, and release that keep viewer engaged from moment to moment. The overall mood of the film is rooted in anticipation and irony rather than fear or interception. While the premise might suggest that potential for intense or unsettling emotions, the film deliberately avoids pushing too far into discomfort. Instead, it maintains a tone that is engaging without being overwhelming. The emotional rhythm is structured around cycles of build-up and payoff, where tension is introduced and then quickly resolved. This creates a sense of forward momentum, ensuring that the audience remains stimulating without experience prolonged stress. This approach aligns closely with the expectation association with the lead actor like Jason Statham. His presence signals a particular emotional tone that emphasizes confidence, control, and resilience rather than vulnerability. As a result, the emotional experience is shaped by a sense of assurance. Even in moments of heightened intensity, the film attempts to reassure the audience rather than challenge them emotionally. This makes the experience feel more like a guided thrill ride than an unpredictable or deeply immersive emotional journey. In terms of theme, the films operate on familiar and accessible ideas such as the relationship between human and powerful natural forces and the tension between exploration and risk. However, these themes are not explored in a way that demand deep reflection. Instead, they function as a backdrop that support the film's emotional tone. The emphasis is on immediacy rather than depth. The audience is encouraged to feel in the moment rather than to analyze or interpret. This contribute to a viewing experience that is straightforward and easy to process. The intended impact is largely centered on entertainment and engagement. The film aimed to create a sense of excitement that is sustained throughout its runtime rather than building toward a single emotionally significant moment. This is achieved through its pacing and stylistic choices, which prioritize movement and visual clarity. The emotional highs and lows are clearly defined, making it easy for a viewer to follow the intended emotional path without confusion or ambiguity. Another important aspect of the emotional experience is its accessibility. The film avoids extreme in tone, which makes it suitable for a wide audience. It does not rely on complex emotional arc or emotionally ambiguous situation. Instead, it offers a more straightforward emotional palette where feelings are immediate and easily recognizable. This accessibility is a key part of its design, ensuring that the viewers from different backgrounds and preferences can engage with it without difficulty. From a stylistic perspective, the direction by Jon Turteltaub reinforced this approach. This style tends to favor clarity and inconsistency, which help maintain a stable emotional tone throughout the film. There are few abrupt shifts or unexpected emotional turns. Instead, the experience is carefully managed, guiding the audience through a predictable but satisfying emotional progression. For fans of the genre, particularly those familiar with films like Jaws, the emotional experience may feel different in its execution. Where earlier films often rely on restraint and psychological tension, the MAG-OPTS for a more direct and visible approach. This shift reflects changing audience expectation, where the emphasis is on experiencing the spectacle rather than imagining. As a result, the emotional response is more immediate but less lingering. In an overall sense, the film promises an emotional experience that is engaging, energetic, and easy to navigate. It is designed to keep viewers entertained through a steady flow of tension and release without demanding deep emotional investment. The film's mood, theme, and intended impact all work together to create an experience that is enjoyable in the moment, even if it does not aim to resonate on a deeper or more lasting level. At its core, the film is built around a concept that is both simple and symbolically rich. The encounter between human ambition and overwhelming an ancient force that exit beyond modern understanding strip of its surface level spectacle. The film's central ideas revolve around limits, what they are and how they are challenged, and what happens when they are ignored. One of the most prominent themes embedded in the film concept is the tension between exploration and consequence. Human curiosity has always driven processes, especially in environments that remain largely unknown. The deep ocean as an abstract setting represents one of the final frontier, vast, mysterious, and largely untouched. Within its context, the film's core idea reflects the desire to push boundaries, to uncover what lies beyond the visible world. However, this pursuit is not presenting as a neutral, it carries an implicit risk. The more humility extends its reach, the greater the possibility of encountering force that can't be easily controlled or understood. This leads to another central theme, the illusion of control. Modern technological advancement often create a sense that humanity can master any environment given enough resources and innovation. The film's conceptual framework challenges this assumption. It suggests that there are domains where control is temporary, fragile, or even entirely absent. This idea is not simply that nature is powerful, but that it operates on a scale and logic that may not align with human expectation. This creates a philosophical tension between confidence and vulnerability, between what humanity believes it can manage and what actually lies beyond its capacity. The film also engaged with the idea of time as a force that reshaped relevance. The presence of an ancient entity within a modern setting symbolizes a collision between different eras. It raises question about how progress is measured and whether newer always mean more dominant. In abstract terms, the concept suggests that the past is not necessarily erased by the present. Instead, it can persist in way that challenges contemporary assumption. This theme add a layer of depth to the film's core idea, framing it as more than just a confrontation. It becomes a reflection on continuity and survival across vast stretches of time. Another important aspect of the film's conceptual foundation is the theme of scale and perspective. Human beings tend to perceive themselves as central within their environment, often measuring significance based on human experience. The film disrupts their perspective by introducing a force that exists on a much larger scale, both physically and conceptually. This shift in scale alters how importance is defined. It suggests that human concern, while meaningful within their own context, may be relatively small when viewed against the broader force of nature. This idea does not diminish human value, but it does reposition it within a larger, more complex system. The message that emerged from these themes is not presenting in a more moralizing or dictative way. Instead, it operates as an underlying current that shaped the film's identity. At its more basic level, the film suggests that respect for the unknown is essential. This does not mean avoiding exploration, but rather approaching it with an awareness of the limit. The concept acknowledges that curiosity is a defining human trait, but it also implies that curiosity without caution can lead to unintended consequences. In terms of story concept, the film can be understood as an exploration of confrontation, not just between humans and as an external force, but between different ways of understanding the world. On one side is a perspective grounded in progress, control, and expansion. On the other is perspective defined by endurance, instinct, and natural order. The interaction between these perspectives create a conceptual tension that drives the film's thematic structure. It is not about revolving this tension completely, but about highlighting its existence. The directing style of Jon Turteltaub reinforces this conceptual approach by presenting these ideas in a way that remain accessible. The film does not demand deep philosophical interpretation, but it provides enough thematic structure for those who choose to manage with it on that level. This balance allows the core idea to function on multiple layers, immediate and entertaining on the surface, but open to broader interpretation beneath. When viewed in relation to earlier work in the genre such as Ja, the core idea remains consistent in its foundation but different in emphasis. Both films explore the relationship between human and powerful natural forces, but the Mag expand this idea to a larger scale, both visually and conceptually. It reflects a modern perspective where the unknown is not just a force of fear but also a space of possibility and risk intertwined. Ultimately, the core idea of the film can be summarized as an exploration of human ambition meeting natural magnitude. It is about the boundaries that define existence, that the consequence of crossing them, and the ongoing tension between curiosity and caution. Through its theme, message, and conceptual framework, the film presents a narrative foundation that, while simple in structure, carries broader implication about how humanity relate to the world it seeks to understand. At the center of the film lies a conflict that is less about a single confrontation and more about a layered tension between human intention and uncontrollable forces. This conflict operates on multiple levels: practical, psychological, and moral, creating a structure where challenges are not only external but also internal in nature. Rather than focusing on isolated moments, the film builds its identity around a continuous push and pull between opposing ideas. One of the most prominent aspects of this central conflict is the moral dilemma surrounding exploration and responsibility. Human progress is often driven by the desire to go further, to discover what has not yet been seen or understood. However, this ambition raises an important question: should all boundaries be crossed simply because they can be? The conflict emerges from the tension between curiosity and caution. On one side is the belief that advancement requires risk and bold action. On the other is the recognition that certain risks may carry consequences beyond human control. This dilemma does not present a clear right or wrong answer, what which is what gives its lasting significance. Closely tied to this is the challenge of control versus acceptance. Modern systems, technological, scientific, and organizational, are built on the assumption that the environment can be managed and predicted. The film's central tension challenges this assumption by introducing the idea that some forces resist control entirely. This creates a conflict not just in action but in minds, and characters are implicitly positioned between two approaches, attempting to dominate the situation through effort and ingenuity, or recognizing the limit of that approach and adopting accordingly. The difficulty lies in determining which response is appropriate, especially when the stakes are high. Another dimension of the conflict involves scale and vulnerability. Human systems are designed around a certain scale of understanding where problems can be measured, analyzed, and addressed. When that scale is disrupted, it creates a sense of imbalance. The conflict here is not simply about overcoming an obstacle but about confronting something that exists outside the usual framework of problem solving. This introduces a psychological challenge: maintaining composure and rationality in situations that feel fundamentally overwhelming. The tension arises from the gap between human expectation and reality, where familiar strategies may no longer apply. There is also a subtitle but important conflict between individual decision making and collective consequence. Attention taken in pursuit of progress or resolution often have wider implications that extend beyond the immediate context. This creates a moral tension where choices must be evaluated not only for their immediate effectiveness but also for their broader impact. The film's central conflict reflects this complexity by suggesting that even when intention decision can lead to unintended outcome, this add a layer of ethical ambiguity where success is not always clearly defined. The influence of Jon Turteltaub can be seen in how this conflict is presented. Rather than emphasizing the darkness or existential dread, the film frames its tension in a way that remains accessible and engaging. The conflict is real, but it is not presenting as overwhelming or paralyzing. Instead, it is structured to maintain momentum, allowing the audience to engage with the challenges without becoming lost in their complexity. This approach shaped the tone of the conflict, making it feel immediate and dynamic rather than deeply introspective. In comparison to earlier works like Jaw, the nature of the central conflict shift in scale and emphasis. While both films explore the interaction between human and powerful natural forces, the film expands this interaction into a broader conceptual phase. The conflict between less about a localized struggle and more about a generalized confrontation with the unknown. This shift reflects changing audience expectation, where the focus moves from contained tension to expansive challenges. Another key element of the central conflict is the idea of perception versus reality. Human understanding is often based on assumptions about safety, predictability, and the limit of the environment. When those assumptions are challenged, it creates a form of cognitive tension. The conflict is not about responding to external pressure but also about adjusting the internal framework of understanding. This requires a level of adaptability that goes beyond physical action, involving a shift in how situation is interpreted and approached. Ultimately, the central conflict of the film can be understood as a continuous negotiation between ambition and limitation. It is not resolved through a single decision or action, but through an ongoing process of confronting and reassessing boundaries. The tension remains active because the underlying tension do not have definitive answer. How far should humanity push into the unknown? How much control is truly possible? And that responsibilities come with the pursuit of progress. The question from the foundation of the film's conflict give it a structure that extends beyond immediate challenges. By framing its tension in terms of moral dilemmas, conceptual challenges, and shifting perspective, the film creates a conflict that is both engaging and thought-provoking. Even without focusing on specific event, it becomes clear that the true struggle lies not just in what is faced, but in how it is understood and approached. The Mac operates on a surface level, a spectral driven thriller, but beneath that presentation, it engages with a set of recurring themes that shape its identity. These themes are not deeply philosophical in execution, but yet they are clearly embedded in the film structure and influence how audience interprets its meaning. When examined through the lens of ethical question, emotional arc, and cultural topic, the film reveals a framework that reflects both traditional genre ideas and modern cinematic priorities. One of the most prominent thematic areas involve ethical questions surrounding human ambition and responsibility. The film raises the issue of how far humanity should go into in its pursuit of discovery and advancement. Exploration is often framed as inherently positive, but the film introduces the idea that progress can carry unintended consequences. This creates a moral tension between curiosity and caution. The ethical question is not simply whether something can be done, but whether it should be done. This theme reflects a broader concern in contemporary society where technological and scientific advancement often outpace a discussion about their long-term impact. The film does not provide definitive answer, but it encourages viewers to consider the balance between innovation and accountability. Another key theme is the relationship between human and nature, particularly the idea that nature operates independently of human control. This theme challenges the assumption that human intelligence and technology can dominate all environment. Instead, it suggests that there are forces that exist beyond human influence, requiring request rather than conquest. This concept aligns with a long-standing tradition in cinema, often seen in films like Jaws, where natural forces are depicted as both powerful and indifferent. In the Mac, this theme is expanded to emphasize scale, reinforcing the idea that human perspective is limited when compared to the vastness of the natural world. The film also explores emotional arc related to fear, confidence, and resilience, though these are presented in a simplified and accessible manner. Rather than focusing on complex psychological development, the emotional progression tend to revolve around moving from uncertainty to control and from hesitation to action. This reflects a broader pattern in action-oriented cinema where emotional growth is tied to overcoming challenges rather than internal transformation. The emphasis is on maintaining composure and responding effectively under pressure, which align with the expectations set by the film's genre and pacing. Another emotional themes involve the contrast between individual capability and collective effort. While the film acknowledges the role of personal skill and determination, it also suggests that large-scale challenges often require operation. This creates a dynamic where individual action are important but not sufficient on their own. The theme reinforces the idea that collaboration can enhance effectiveness, particularly in situations that exceed the capacity of any single person. This concept is presented in a straightforward way without extensive exploration, but it remains an underlying element of the film's thematic structure. From a culture perspective, the film reflects the growing influence of globalization in filmmaking. The film production and casting choice indicate an intention to appeal to an international audience. This is evident in the inclusion of actors such as Bingbing, which signals an effort to connect with viewers beyond Western market. Thematically, this translated into a narrative style that avoids culturally specific reference and instead focuses on universally recognizable idea. The result is a film that prioritizes accessibility, ensuring that its theme can be understood across different culture content. Another cultural theme relates to the concept of spectacle as a form of modern storytelling. In contemporary cinema, visual scale and technical achievement often play a central role in how stories are communicated. The Meg reflects this trend by using its production design and visual effect to convey its theme. The emphasis on scale reinforcing ideas about human limitation and national magnitude while also aligned with audience expectation for blockbuster entertainment. This approach highlights how storytelling methods have evolved with visual impact becoming as important as narrative depth. The directing style of Jon Turteltaub contribute to how these themes are presented. These approaches tend to favor clarity and accessibility, which means that these themes are communicated in a direct and uncomplicated manner. This ensures that they remain understandable to a wide audience, but it also limits the degree of noise. The film does not aim to challenge viewers with ambiguity, instead, it presents ideas in a way that support engagement and entertainment. Finally, there is an underlying theme of adaptation to the unknown. This theme connects many of the other, emphasizes the need to adjust expectation and strategies when faced with unfamiliar conditions. It reflects a broader human experience, the necessity of responding to change and uncertainty. While the film does not explore the idea in depth, it uses it as a foundation for its thematic structure, reinforcing the importance of flexibility and awareness. The theme explored in the film revolve around ethical responsibility, human limitation, emotional resilience, and global accessibility. While these themes are presented in a straightforward and often simplified manner, they provide a cohesive framework that supports the film's identity by combining ethical questions, emotional arc, culture consideration. The film creates a thematic landscape that is consistent with its genre while still offering point of reflection for the audience. The film connects with viewers emotionally in a way that is immediate, accessible, and largely driven by sensory engagement rather than deep introspection. Its emotional design is built around creating a deep, steady rhythm of tension and release, allowing audience to feel involved without requiring a heavy emotional investment. This approach reflects a broader trend in modern blockbuster filmmaking where the emphasis is placed on broader trend in modern blockbuster filmmaking where the emphasis is placed on experience and momentum rather than complex emotional layering. At the level of mood, the film establishes a consistent atmosphere of anticipation. This anticipation is not overwhelming or psychologically intense. Instead, it is controlled and carefully managed. Viewers are invited to feel alert and engaged, but not deeply unsettled. The emotional tone leans toward excitement, alertness, rather than fear or anxiety. This makes the films more widely accessible as it avoids pushing audience into discomfort. The mood is designed to be stimulating without being exhausting, which help maintain engagement over time. The film themes play a subtle but important role in shaping its emotional connection. Ideas related to human limitation, the unknown, and the balance between confidence and caution are present, but they are communicated in a straightforward manner. These themes resonate because they tap into universal experience moment where individual face situations that challenge their sense of control. However, the film does not dwell on these ideas long enough to create deep emotional reflection. Instead, they function as a backdrop that enhance the immediate emotional experience. Viewers recognize the theme, but they are not required to analyze them in detail. A key aspect of the viewer experience is the sense of participation in a controlled environment. The film creates situations that feel intense, but it also provides reassurance through its tone and structure. This balance allows viewers to engage with attention while maintaining a sense of safety. The emotional connection is therefore based on shared excitement rather than vulnerability. Audiences are encouraged to feel involved but not exposed. This distinction is important as it defines the type of emotional response the film aims to generate. The presence of Jensen's method also influences how viewers connect emotionally. His screen persona is associated with confidence and physical ability, which shape audience expectation rather than creating uncertainty about emotional outcome. His presence tend to stabilize the experience. Viewers are more likely to feel assured that an ensures we shift the emotional tone toward control intensity. This does not eliminate tension, but it frames it in a way that feels manageable and predictable. From a stylistic perspective, the direction by Jon Turteltaub reinforces this approach. His filmmaking style prioritizes clarity and forward momentum, ensuring that emotional cues are easy to follow. There are few moments of ambiguity or emotional complexity. Instead, the film uses clear signal through pacing, sound, and visual composition to guide the audience emotional responses, make the experience straightforward, allowing viewer to engage without needing to interpret subtitles. Shift into another factor in the film's emotional connection is its reliance on collective viewing dynamic. The structure and the tone make it particularly suited for group setting where reactions can be shared in real time. The emotional experience becomes less about individual interception and more about communal engagement. Viewers respond together to moment of tension and release, which enhance the overall impact. This social aspect is a key part of how the films connect with its audience as they transform the viewing experience into a shared activity. Straightforward, allowing viewer to engage without needing to interrupt, subtitles shift in tone. Another factor in the film's emotional connection is its reliance on collective viewing dynamic. The structure and tone make it particularly suited for group setting, where reaction can be shared in real time. The emotional experience becomes less about individual interception and more about communal engagement. We will respond together to moment of tension and release, which enhance the overall impact. This social aspect is a key part of how the films connect with its audience as they transform the viewing experience into a shared activity. When compared to the earlier film in the genre such as Jar, the emotional connection in the film is less dependent on sustained suspense and more focused on immediate impact, where earlier film often rely on gradual build-up and psychological tension. This film OPDS for a more direct approach. The emotional response is quicker and more visible, but it may not linger as long after the viewing experience. This reflects a shift in audience expectation, where immediacy often take precedence over subtlety. Ultimately, the emotional connection offered by the film is defined by its balance between intensity and accessibility. It engages viewer through a combination of mood, theme, and structure pacing, creating an experience that is easy to follow and consistently engaging. The film does not aim to provoke deep emotional reflection or lasting interception. Instead, it focusing on delivering a clear and controlled emotional journey where the primary goal is to entertain and involve the audience in the moment. In this sense, the film succeeds by understanding its audience. It recognizes that many viewers are looking for an experience that is engaging but not demanding, exciting but not overwhelming. By aligning its more themes and stylistic choices with these expectations, the film creates an emotional connection that is immediate, effective, and widely accessible, even if it remains relatively surface level in its depth. In this film, the character construction follow a functional archetype-driven approach rather than a deeply layered psychological design. This is consistent with the film's broader identity as a spectral-oriented production where characters are shaped to support tone, pacing, and accessibility. From a reviewer standpoint, the emphasis is less on transformation and more on clarity of role and recognizability. Starting with the very main character, the central figure aligns strongly with the reluctant expert archetype, a character defined by competence, experience, and a degree of emotional restraint. This type of character is commonly used in action oriented cinema because it provides immediate credibility without requiring extensive development. The personality traits associated with this archetype include confidence, defensiveness, and control vulnerability. There is an implied depth beneath the surface, but it is not explored in a detailed or introspective way. Instead, it functions as a subtitle layer that adds weight to the character presence without slowing down the narrative momentum. The casting of Jensen's method reinforced this archetype effectively. His established screen persona carry expectation of physical capability and emotional steadiness. As a result, the character become an extension of these qualities. The performance style lean toward minimalism, emotional expression, relying more on presence than on dialogue heavy characterization. This approach suits the film's tone, but it also limits the range of emotional engagement that the character can offer. The audience connect through familiar rather than discovery. Moving to the supporting main character, there is a clear use of complementary archetype designed to create balance. One notable type is the intellectual specialist, often associated with a scientific or analytical expert. This archetype introduces a contrast to the central figure by emphasizing knowledge and reasoning over physical action. The personality trait here include curiosity, rationality, and a sense of responsibility. While these character type has the potential for thematic depth, particularly in relation to ideas about exploration and ethics, it is presenting in a streamlined manner that prioritizes clarity over complexity. Another recurring archetype is the corporate authority figure, representing ambition, control, and strategic thinking. This archetype often embodies the tension between progress and sequence, serving as a symbolic representation of broader institutional priority. The personality trait associated with this archetype include confidence, assertiveness, and occasional detachment. In a more complex narrative, This role might be explored with greater knowledge, but here it remained relatively straightforward, functioning as a structural element rather than a deeply examined personality. The presence of an international cast, including Lee Bingbing, add another dimension to the character framework. Her role, aligned with a blend of professional competence and emotional grounding, contributed to the film's effort to appeal to a global audience. The personality traits here include intelligence, compassion, and empathy. Through these qualities are expressed in a Meyer way. The character serves as both a narrative actor and a point of accessibility for viewer. But like other in the film, he is not given extensive psychological depth. For a broader perspective, the film characters are defined more by their function within the story structure than by their internal complexities. This is not necessarily a flaw, rather than it is a deliberate stylistic choice that aligns with the direction of Jon Turteltaub. His approach tends to favor clear, easily identifiable role that allow the audience to quickly understand each character purpose. This ensures that the focus remains on pacing and visual engagement rather than on integrate character development. However, this approach also introduces a certain limitation. The reliance on archetype means the character can feel predictable and familiar, reducing the potential for surprise or emotional depth. The audience is not asked to interpret complex motivation or navigate ambiguous personality. Instead, they are presented with characters who fit established pattern, making the viewing experience more straightforward but less layered in comparison to more character-driven films within the same genre, such as Jaw. The Meg places less emphasis on interpersonal dynamic and psychological notes, while Ja uses its character to build tension and explore fear on a deeper level. The Meg uses its character primarily as anchor for action and progression. This difference highlights a shift in priorities where modern blockbusters often prioritize skill and accessibility over detailed character study. Ultimately, the character design in this film can be understood as efficient and purpose driven. The use of recognizable archetype, clear personality, and a minimum emotional complexity allow the film to maintain a consistent tone and pace. While this limits the depth of character exploration, it supports the film's primary goal, delivering in an engaging, easy to follow expertise that allow with audience expectation for large scale entertainment. In this film, the acting performances are shaped by the film's overall priorities, clarity, momentum, and accessibility rather than aiming for deeply layered or transformative performance. The cast delivers work that is emotionally controlled, stylistically consistent, and aligned with the film's tone. The result is a set of performances that feel dependable and cohesive, even if they do not push into more complex emotional territory. Focusing on the lead actor, with Jason Statham anchored the film with a performance that relies heavily on presence and restraint. His style is built around physical confidence and a steady emotional baseline, which create a sense of relatability for the audience. Rather than expressing a wide range of emotion, he maintains a controlled intensity that fits the film pacing. This approach works effectively within the context of the movie as it avoids slowing down the momentum. However, it also means that the emotional range remains relatively narrow. The performance connects through similarity and consistency rather than through unexpected shift or deeper vulnerability. From an emotional standpoint, Statham performance offer a kind of reassurance. Viewers are not into uncertainty or complexity, instead they are guided by a clear and stable presence. This can be seen as both a strength and a limitation. On one hand, it supports the film's accessible tone and make the experience easy to engage with. On the other hand, it reduces the potential for emotional depth as the performance rarely move beyond its established rhythm. Looking at the supporting cast, the Lee Bingbing provide a contrasting energy that add look balance to the film. Her performance lean more toward emotional openness and composure, offering moment of warmth and connection that complement the lead control style. She brings a sense of groundedness that help humanize the overall experience even within a highly stylized environment. While her role is not exploring greater depth, her presence adds an important emotional layer, particularly in terms of tone and relatability. Rainn contribute a different kind of performance, introducing element of lightness and unpredictability. His style provides a tonal contrast that prevents the film from becoming overly uniform. Emotionally, this adds variety, giving the audience moment of relief from the otherwise steady intensity. However, this contrast is carefully managed so that it does not disturb the overall flow. His performance fit within the film's framework, offering variation without shifting the tone too dramatically. When considering chemistry, the interaction between the cast are built on functional alignment rather than the deep emotional interplay. The relationship feel clear, understandable, but they are not heavily layered. The chemistry serve the film's pacing, ensuring that interaction are efficient and easy to follow. There is a sense of coordination among the actors where each performance support the other without competing for emotional focus. This creates a cohesive ensemble as if the connection do not reach a high level of emotional intensity. The directing approach of Jon Turteltaub play a significant role in shaping these performances. His style emphasizes clarity and consistency, guiding the actor toward performance that align with the film's overall tone. There is a little room for improvisational or highly nuanced acting choices. Instead, the focus is on delivering performances that are immediately understandable and that maintain the film's forward momentum. This ensures that the acting support the broader cinematic experience rather than drawing attention to itself. Emotionally, the performances in this film are designed to support engagement rather than provoke introspection. The actors do not aim to challenge the audience with complex emotional arcs. Instead, they create a stable environment in which the viewers can focus on the film's spectacle and pacing. This approach aligns with the expectation of the genre, where acting often functions as a complement to the visual and the structural element rather than as the central focus. In comparison to more performance-driven films, the acting here may feel restrained or even limited. However, within the context of a large-scale action thriller, this restraint becomes a part of the film identity. The performances are purposeful and controlled, contributing to a cohesive tone that prioritizes accessibility and consistency. Ultimately, the acting in this film succeeds in delivering what the film required: clear, reliable, emotionally steady performance. While it may not offer moments of profound emotional depth or transformation, it effectively supports the film's overall experience, ensuring that the audience remain engaged without being distracted by unnecessary complexity. When examining realism and character depth in this film, it becomes clear that the film adopts a selective approach to realism, prioritizing clarity and engagement over psychology or behavioral authenticity. This choice shaped how characters are written, performed, and ultimately perceived by the audience. Rather than striving for lifelike complexity, the film presents characters who function effectively within its stylized world, even if that comes at the expense of deeper realism. Starting with character development, the film follows a relatively minimalistic structure. Characters are introduced with clearly defined traits and tend to remain consistent throughout. This consistency supports the film pacing as it avoids the need for extended exploration of internal gems. However, it also limits the sense of progression. Development is present in a general sense, but it is not deeply layered or psychologically integrated. Instead of gradual transformation, the emphasis is on maintaining a stable identity that aligns with the film's tone. The main character exemplify this approach. The central figure, portrayed by Jason Statham, is built around a core set of traits: confidence, competence, and emotional restraint. These qualities are established clearly and maintained largely unchanged. From a realism perspective, this can feel somewhat simplified, as real individuals often exhibit greater variability and contradiction. However, within the film's framework, this stability serves a purpose. It creates a dependable focal point for the audience, even if it reduces the opportunity for nuanced development. In terms of believability, the films operate within its own internal logic rather than adhering strictly to real-world behavior. Characters respond to situations in ways that are efficient and fact, often prioritizing action over reflection. This approach aligns with the expectation of the genre, where momentum is a key factor. While this can make certain reactions feel less natural to or fully realize, it also ensures that the narrative remains accessible and easy to follow. The film does not aim to replicate real life decision making processes. Instead, it presents a streamlined variant that supports its pacing and tone. The supporting cast follows similar pattern. Character portrayed by actors such as Bingbing are defined by clear roles and recognizable traits such as professionalism, composure, and empathy. These qualities are presented in a straightforward manner, making them easy for the audience to understand. However, the lack of deeper exploration means that these characters rarely move beyond their initial definition. This believability is therefore tied more to their consistency than to their complexity. When considering emotional range, the film maintains a relatively narrow spectrum. Emotions are expressed in a controlled and often understated way, avoiding extreme. This restraint contribute to the film's accessibility as it prevents the tone from becoming overwhelming or unpredictable. However, it also limits the depth of emotional engagement. Characters do not frequently display conflicting emotion or undergo significant internal change. Instead, their emotional response are aligned with the film's pacing, appearing when needed and resolving quickly. The directing style of Jon Turteltaub for these choices. His approach emphasized clarity and forward momentum, which naturally reduced the space for detailed character exploration. Performances are guided toward consistency and readability, ensuring that the audience can easily interpret each character's role and emotional state. This direction supports the film overall structure, but is also contribute to a sense of emotional simplicity. From a comparative perspective, films like Ja offer a different approach to realism and depth. In such films, characters often display more nuanced behavior and a broader emotional range, which enhance the sense of realism. In this film, the Mac by contrast reflect a more modern blockbuster style where efficacy and accessibility take precedence over detailed characterization. This shift highlights how audience expectation and industry priorities have evolved over time. It is important to note that the film approach to realism is not necessarily a flaw but rather a deliberate stylistic decision. By simplifying character development and limiting emotional complexity, the film creates a viewing experience that is easy to engage with and broadly appealing. The trade-off is a reduction in depth, which may leave some viewers wanting more from the character. Ultimately, realism and character depth in these films are shaped by the film's broader goal. It prioritizes consistency, clarity, and momentum, resulting in characters who are believable within their context but not deeply explored. The emotional range may control supporting the film's tone by limiting its impact. This approach aligns with the expectation of a spectacle-driven action thriller where character depth is secondary to the overall experience. The film was produced with an estimated cost range of approximately $130 to $150 million, placing it in the mid to upper tier of contemporary studio blockbuster. This level of funding reflects a balance between ambitious visual scope and controlled financial risk. It is substantial enough to support large-scale production demand, but still below the highest budget associated with major franchise installment that can exceed $200 million. From an analytical standpoint, a significant share of this budget would have been allocated to visual effects and digital production. The film's concept depends heavily on computer-generated imagery requiring advanced modeling and animation and rendering processes. This task involves multiple stages of refinement and coordination across visual effects, making them one of the most resource-intensive aspects of the production. Additionally, integrating digital elements with live-action footage, particularly in water-based environment, adds further technical complexity, increasing both time and cost. Another major area of resource allocation involves physical production infrastructure. Even with extensive use of CGI, large portion of filming would rely on constructed set, control water tank, and specialized equipment designed to stimulate water underwater conditions. These setups are costly due to their scale, maintenance requirement, and safety consideration. The need for precise coordination between practical and digital elements also contribute to the overall production expenses. Personnel cost form another important component of the budget. While Jason Statham is a well-established lead, the film does not depend on a large ensemble of high-salary stars, which help moderate total expenditure in this category. At the same time, the inclusion of internationally recognized actors such as Bingbing reflect a strategic investment in global market appeal. This casting approach suggests that financial resources were allocated not only for performance but also for expanding the film's reach across different regions. The film production, design, and cinematography also contribute to its overall cost structure, creating a consistent visual style that conveys scale and clarity. Required careful planning, including lighting, setup, camera system, and post-production color work. While these elements may not be as immediately visible as visual effects, they play a crucial role in shaping the film's financial presentation and therefore represent a meaningful portion of the budget. Although not always included in the official production figure, marketing and distribution expenses are relative. We're considering the film total financial footprint. For a project of this scale, promotional campaigns can require tens of millions of dollars. These campaigns are typically designed to highlight the film's visual appeal and accessibility, targeting a broad international audience. The involvement of a global marketing strategy aligned with the film's production choices, reinforcing its positioning as a widely accessible blockbuster. When compared to the similar film, the film fall within a moderate budget range for this genre. For example, Jurassic World had a reported budget of around $150 million, while Godzilla operated at a comparable level. These films share similar production demand, particularly in terms of visual effects and large-scale action design. However, major franchise sequence and cinematic universe entries often exceed these figures, indicated that the film was produced with relatively tighter financial parameters. These comparisons suggest a cost management strategy aimed at achieving blockbuster level presentation without reaching the highest level of financial risk. By maintaining a budget within this range, the production allows for strong visual impact while still leaving room for profitability, especially when considering international box office performance. The production budget of the film reflects a careful allocation of resources across visual effects, physical production, personnel, and a global positioning. Its cost range places it alongside similar large-scale films, but slightly below the most expensive entries in the genre. This positioning indicated deliberate effort to balance ambition with their financial efficiency, resulting in a production model that supports both spectacle and modern market viability. The film recorded a domestic box office total of roughly $145 million, placing it in a solid but not dominant position within the 2018 release landscape. From an analytical perspective, this figure reflects a film that performed consistently rather than explosively, supported by steady audience turnout rather than a single front-loaded surge. Looking at the region, the North America market tend to respond roughly strongly to established franchise, recognizable intellectual property, and critically acclaimed releases. The Meg entered this environment as a standalone project without the backing of a major cinematic universe. As a result, its domestic earnings suggest a level of success driven more by genre appeal and star recognition than by brand loyalty. The presence of Jensen's method likely contributed to the initial audience interest, particularly among viewers familiar with his action-oriented role, but the film did not rely on a pre-existing fan base in the way franchise film often do. In terms of audience trend, the film's domestic performance indicate a pattern of broad but moderate engagement. Viewers who enjoy action and creature feature genres were the primary contributor to its earning. The film's accessible tone and relatively controlled intensity made it suitable for a wide demographic, including younger audience and casual moviegoer. However, it did not generate the kind of sustained culture momentum, repeat viewing pattern that are often associated with higher domestic totals. This suggests that while the film attracted attention, it did not become a dominant topic of conversation in the North American market. Seasonal timing also play a role in understanding its performance. Released during the summer period, a time typically associated with high competition, the film faced multiple large-scale production targeting similar audience. In this context, its box office total can be seen as competitive rather than exceptional, holding its position without significantly outperforming other releases. This stability reflects a film that meets audience expectation without exceeding them in a way that would drive unusually high demand. When comparing the film into similar film, its domestic earnings fall within a mid-range bracket for its genre. For instance, Godzilla achieved a domestic total exceeding $200 million, benefited from brand recognition and a more established presence in popular culture. Similarly, Jurassic World reached significantly higher figure driven by its connection to a long-running franchise. In contrast, the Meg operated without that level of built-in audience familiarity, which helps explain the difference in performance. Another useful comparison can be made with standalone action or creature feature film that rely on concept and execution rather than franchise history. Within this category, the Meg performed relatively well, demonstrating that its concept and marketing were effective in attracting a substantial audience. Its domestic total suggests that it succeeded in reaching its target demographic, even if it did not expand far beyond it. An important aspect of the domestic performance is the balance between expectation and outcome. Given its production budget estimated in the 130 to 150 million dollar range. The film's North American earning alone would not have been sufficient to ensure strong profitability. This highlights the increasing importance of international market in modern film distribution. The domestic box office, while significant, represent only one part of the film's overall financial picture. From a trend perspective, the film reflects a broader pattern in which mid-tier blockbusters achieve modern domestic success while relying on global appeal to reach higher overall total. The film performance suggests that audiences in North America were receptive to its premise and execution, but not to the extent of evaluating it into the highest performing category of the year. In summary, the domestic box office performance of the film can be categorized as steady, competitive, and aligned with genre expectation. Its earnings demonstrate effective audience targeting and consistent engagement, while also highlighting the limitation faced by standalone film in a market often dominated by established franchise. The film demonstrates a markedly different performance pattern outside North America, with international box office earnings exceeding $380 million, bringing its global total to over $530 million. This disparity between domestic and international revenue highlights the film's strategic positioning as a globally oriented production designed to appeal to a wide range of markets rather than relying primarily on a single region. Focusing on region, the most significant contribution came from China, which accounted for a substantial portion of the film's international total. This strong performance is closely tied to the film's co-production structure and casting decision. The inclusion of Bingbing reflects a deliberate effort to engage Chinese audience both culturally and commercially. As a result, the film was able to secure a level of visibility and acceptance in that market that many Western productions do not achieve. Beyond China, the film also performed consistently across other regions, including Europe and part of Asia, indicated a broadly positive reception. In terms of market reception, the film benefited from its universal concept and minimal reliance on culturally specific elements. The premise is easily understood across different languages and cultural contexts, which reduces barrier to entry for international audience. This accessibility is a key factor in its performance, as it allows the film to connect with viewers who may not share the same cinematic preferences as North American audience. The emphasis on visual spectacle further enhances appeal as it translates effectively across markets without requiring extensive dialogue or culture noise. Another important factor in the film's international success is the relative difference in audience expectation in many international markets, particularly in Asia. There is a strong appetite for large-scale visually driven film. The Megalodon well with these preferences, offering a clear and engaging experience that prioritizes scale and pacing. This alignment helps explain why the film performed more strongly abroad than domestically, where audience expectation may place greater emphasis on originality or critical reception. The marketing impact of the film also plays a significant role in its international performances. Promotional campaigns were tailored to highlight the film's spectacle and global appeal, rather than focusing on narrative complexity. In regions like China, marketing effect likely emphasized the involvement of local talent and the film's co-production strategy, which can enhance audience interest and trust. Globally, the marketing strategy focused on creating a clear and memorable identity, ensuring that the film stood out in a competitive release environment. When compared to the other similar film, the Mac follow a pattern seen in other international successful production. For example, Warcraft achieved a significantly higher international total than its domestic earning, largely due to its strong performance in China. Similarly, Pacific Rim demonstrated the importance of global market for visually driven concept-focused film. In this context, the Mac can be seen as part of a broader trend in which films with the universal theme and strong visual element perform particularly well outside North America. Another point of comparison is Godzilla, which also achieved substantial international success through with a more balanced distribution with domestic and overseas market. The Mac, by contrast, leaned more heavily on its international earning, underscoring the importance of global strategy in its overall financial outcome. From an analytical perspective, the film's international box office performance illustrates how production and marketing decisions are increasingly shaped by global consideration. The allocation of resources toward international casting, accessible theme, and visually driven storytelling reflect a deliberate effort to maximize appeal across multiple regions. This approach reduces the lines on any single market and increases the likelihood of achieving strong overall return. The international earnings of the film are defined by its strong regional performance, particularly in China, broad market reception, and effective global marketing strategy. The film's ability to resonate across different audiences highlight the growing importance of international market in the film industry, as well as the effectiveness of designing production with global appeal in mind. The mega Jiva worldwide gross of approximately $530 million, combining about $145 million from North America with more than $380 million from international market. From a financial analysis standpoint, this total placed the film in a moderately successful global position, particularly for a non-franchise concept-driven release. To understand break-even, it is important to separate production costs from total investment. The reported production budget, generally estimated from $130 to $150 million, does not represent the full financial expenditure. Additional distribution and marketing costs can significantly increase the total expenditure for a film of this scale. Marketing costs are commonly estimated in the range of $70 to $100 million, though the exact figure are rarely disclosed. When combined, the total investment could reasonably fall between $200 to $250 million or more. Box office revenue is not retained entirely by the studio. A portion of ticket sale is shared with theatre, and the percentage vary by region. In general terms, studios may receive around 50 to 55% domestic box office revenue, and the lower percentage, sometimes closer 25 to 40% from international market, depending on local agreement. In this case of China, which was a major contributor to the film's international earnings, the studio share is typically more limited. This means that the headline figure of $530 million does not translate directly into profit. Taking these factors into account, the break-even point for the film can be estimated roughly $400 to $500 million in global box office revenue. Though this is a simplified approximation based on its final worldwide gross, the films likely move beyond break-even and into modest profitability rather than achieving expansionally high return. This outcome reflects a balance between strong international performance and the realities of revenue sharing and marketing expense. From a perspective of global audience reach, the film's financial success is closely tied to its ability to attract viewers across multiple regions. Its performance demonstrates how modern film often rely on international market to achieve profitability, especially when domestic earnings are moderate. The strong overseas response indicates that the film concept and representation were effective in appealing to diverse even if did not dominate any single market. Beyond theatrical release, additional revenue stream play a significant role in the overall financial picture. This includes home entertainment, television licensing, and merchandising. While these figures are not always publicly released, they can contribute substantially to the film's long-term profitability. For a film like The Meg, which is designed to be broadly accessible, these secondary markets are particularly valuable as they extend the film's life cycle beyond its initial release window. Another factor to consider is distribution strategy. The film's co-production element, international partnership, likely influence how revenues was allocated and how costs were shared. Such arrangement can reduce financial risk for individual stakeholders, even if they also limit the share of profit retained by any of one party. This reflects a common approach in modern filmmaking, where large-scale projects are structured to balance investment and exposure across multiple contributors. When compared to the similar film, the film falls into the category of globally successful but not dominant performer. For example, Pacific Rim and Warcraft also rely heavily on international market to achieve financial viability. In contrast, major franchise entries like Jurassic World operate on a larger scale, often generated significantly higher worldwide total net profit margin due to stronger brand recognition. The worldwide gross and break-even analysis of the film illustrates a financial model built on global performance and controlled budgeting. Its total revenue exceeded that likely break-even threshold, supported by international audience and supplementary revenue stream. While not among the highest grossing film of its category, it demonstrates how strategic production and distribution choices can lead to sustainable, if moderate, profitability in the modern film industry. The film presents a useful case for analyzing profitability in modern blockbuster filmmaking, particularly because its financial outcome depend on a combination of controlled production costs, strong international revenue, and post-theatrical income stream rather than domestic dominance alone. Starting with revenue versus cost, the film demonstrates a worldwide gross of roughly $530 million against an estimated production budget of $130 to $150 million. At first glance, this appears to indicate a strong profit margin. However, a more accurate assessment must include additional expenditure, including marketing and distribution costs, which are commonly estimated at $70 to $100 million for a film of this scale. This brings the total investment closer to $200 to $250 million or more. It is also essential to account for the way box office revenue is divided. Studios do not retain the full global gross. Instead, earnings are shared with theatre operators. On average, studios may receive about half of domestic ticket sale and a smaller percentage from international market. In regions like China, where the film performed particularly well, the studio share is significantly reduced. As a result, the net revenue returning to the shift from theatrical release is substantially lower than the headline figure. In conclusion, the MAC can be considered profitable, but in a mere and incremental way. Its theatrical revenue likely brought it closer to or slightly beyond break-even, where ancillary income stream contributed to its overall financial success. The film ROI is best described as moderate, supported by global audience reach and cost control rather than by record-breaking earning. This position it as a commercially successful project within the context of mid to high budget international blockbuster. The Meg received mixed to positive audience reaction, where responses varies depending on viewer expectation and preferences. In general, the film performed well among mainstream and younger demographics, in particular those who favor action-driven, visually engaging entertainment. Teenager and casual moviegoer tended to respond more positively, as the film aligned closely with their preferences for fast pacing and accessible storytelling. Other older audience or viewers who prioritize depth and realism often show a more reserved response. Looking at viewers' feedback, a common trend emerges. Audience appreciated the film entertainment value and spectacle while expressing less enthusiasm for its simplicity. Many viewer approaches the film with the expectation of popcorn experience, and in that context, reactions were largely favorable. The film's tone, supported by the presence of Jason Statham, contributed to a sense of familiarity that resonated with fans of action cinema. Feedback often highlighted that the film was enjoyable when not taken too seriously, suggesting that audience satisfaction depended heavily on mid-set going in. At the same time, some viewers noted limitation in terms of originality and emotional depth. These reactions were more common among audience who prefer character-driven or highly realistic film. For this group, the film rely on established genre convention may have reduced its overall impact. However, these critics did not necessarily translate into disengagement, rather they reflect a difference in expectation. In terms of engagement, the film demonstrated strong performance in social and group viewing context. Its accessible tone and clear structure made it easy to watch with friends or family, contributed to share reaction and discussion. Internationally, engagement was particularly strong, with audience in regions like Asia showing higher enthusiasm level. Audience reaction to the Mac can be described as entertainment focused and expectation dependent, with stronger approval from viewers seeking spectacle rather than depth. The Mac demonstrate how box office performance can significantly shape the way a film is perceived, sometimes independently of its artistic or critical evaluation. Its global earning of over $500 million position it as a commercial success, and this financial outcome influenced both audience attitude and industry interpretation. In terms of critical reception, the film received mixed reviews, with critics often pointing to its straightforward execution and limited depth. Our strong box office results tend to soften the impact of such critique. When a film performs well financially, it is often reclassified as a successful entertainment product, even if it does not achieve critical acclaim. This creates a divide where critics may remain reserved while general audience view the film more favorably due to its popularity and visibility. From the perspective of studio reputation, the film performance reinforced confidence in mid-budget blockbuster strategy. First, studio's profitability and global reach are key indicator of success. The financial outcome of the film suggests that in investing internationally appealing concept-driven film can yield a reliable return. This can enhance the studio reputation for making commercially viable decisions, even if the film itself is not considered groundbreaking. It also encourages similar projects in the future, particularly those designed to perform strongly in overseas market. The Meg stand as a competent commercially focused blockbuster that prioritizes spectacle and accessibility over depth. From a cinematic quality perspective, the film is structurally efficient, maintaining steady pacing and a clear visual storytelling. However, this efficacy comes at the cost of noise, as the films rarely explore stylistic or narrative risk. It feels carefully designed rather than creatively ambiguous. The film is best suited for viewers who approach films primarily as entertainment experience rather than deep storytelling experience. In terms of audience type, it strongly appeals to casual moviegoers who enjoy visual engaging, fast-paced content that is easy to follow. It works particularly well for group viewing, friend or families looking for something exciting but not emotionally heavy. From a genre preferences perspective, the film is ideal for fan of action, creature feature, and light science in fiction. If you enjoy large-scale spectacle, steady pacing, and a focus on visual impact, the film aligns well with those expectations. We will appreciate films like Ja but are open to a more modern, less suspense-driven approach may find it enjoyable. It also suits audiences who are comfortable with stylized, exaggerated scenarios and do not require strict realism. Regarding age group, the film is most appropriate for teenager and adult. Younger viewers can engage with its accessible tone and control intensity, while adults may appreciate its polished production and straightforward execution. The film offers excitement, engagement rather than lasting impact. It is designed to be enjoyed in the moment, not deeply analyzed afterward. The mag is recommended for viewers seeking light, spectacle-driven entertainment and less so for those expecting depth or innovation.